What's up, YouTube? Welcome to ExceedTheHype.com. It's your boy Lucrecio coming at you with another video. Alright, today's video, as we continue our 2017-2018 outlook, today's video is about the Orlando Magic. Now, there's not a whole lot going on with the Orlando Magic right now. They're not contenders in the East. It's very unlikely that there'll be a playoff team, but Orlando does have some positive things going on, okay? They are building for the future. They do have some players. They do have some role players. Along with the coaching, Frank Vogel's coaching, and the new additions and things of that nature that they're adding to this team, they do have a positive outlook going forward. I don't like some of their draft picks. Some of their choices were very interesting as far as prospects to pursue. But we'll talk about all that in the video. All right, so let's start the roster off with their off-season acquisition this year, Mr. Aaron Afflalo. So he was playing with the Sacramento Kings, if I'm not mistaken. Now, Aaron Afflalo is a player who I always thought was a really, really serviceable to good player. Like, he's somebody who's a above-average defender. He's somebody who can shoot somewhat consistently from the three-point line. Well, for some reason, he's never got to that Avery Bradley type level, or even like Iman Shumpert. He was never even though Iman Shumpert isn't really good anymore, but he was never seen in that same way. People always saw him as a lesser player than those other guys. Now that he's getting kind of old, I kind of wonder where he goes from here in his career. And also, when you add in the fact that he didn't choose, or maybe a contender wasn't really interested in him, but he didn't choose to go to a contender. He went to a team where he's still gonna get some shots and things of that nature. So it makes me wonder how much he really wants to win. But I always thought Aaron Afflalo was a pretty good player. He never really got his just due in the NBA. Let's talk about DJ Augustin. DJ Augustin is like the backup point guard. I can never forget. I thought his career was gonna take a completely different route. I really did think his career was going to be completely different than it ended up being. When he was with Chicago, the way Tom Thibodeau got every piece of talent out of him, I really thought he would go from Chicago and have a very good career. He's had a solid backup point guard career up to this point, and he's been, good with Orlando, but the problem is Orlando isn't really relevant for too much. So it kind of is what it is with him, but he's a very solid backup point guard. Mack. So he was the biggest winner from the Toronto run that they had they're still on it technically, but a couple years ago where they pushed Cleveland to 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. He was the biggest beneficiary out of that whole situation. Yeah, Kyle Lowry got his money. DeMar DeRozan got his money and things of that nature. But Bismack Biyombo was the guy who was kind of overpaid in this whole situation. It was the biggest overreaction from that series, and that Toronto team was Bismack Biyombo. I don't love Bismack Biyombo as a player. I honestly don't. I think he's a very good rebounder, and he's somebody who could protect your rim. So if those are the two things that you really want from him, and you go in understanding that that's what you're going to get, then as a team, you'll be fine, ultimately. But if you think you're going to get more out of him unless he continues to develop as a player, then I think you are mistaken. Because he will give you some block shots, and then he'll give you some good rebounding. But other than that, I don't really see what he'll give you on a team. Evan Fournier. Now, he was one of their guys that they were planning to use as a building block for this team going forward. I don't know a whole lot about Evan Fournier because I haven't got to watch Orlando Magic that much. But from what I've seen of him, he seems to be a very good offensive player. He's a pretty good shooter, pretty consistent scorer from what I have seen, which is once again a limited sample size. So I'm assuming that they still have him in their plans or whatever going forward. We'll see. Aaron Gordon is their star. He's their star player. He's their starting power forward. He has shown himself so far to be a tremendous athlete. He has gotten a lot of attention around the league because of his performances in a dunk contest and things of that nature. He always reminded me of Blake Griffin. I want to see how his game progresses. Now, he's been in the league for quite a while now, and I just want to see how his offensive game will continue to grow, and whether or not he can be a franchise player in the NBA. That's really what I wonder with Aaron Gordon. I do think he has that in him. I do think he will need a very good surrounding cast, some good shooters, some good defenders, and things of that nature. Ultimately, if Orlando is interested in making him their franchise player going forward, they're going to have to give him more talent, ultimately. That's really what it's going to boil down to. They're just going to have to surround him, Aaron Gordon, with more talent. Let's see. Let's talk about Jonathan Isaac. Jonathan Isaac is the biggest reason that the outlook on this team is very positive going forward. He went to FSU. He was one of the big rookies or whatever, the blue chippers that were coming out of high school, and then in college he helped push that FSU team. Now, Dwayne Bacon was also a big factor, even though he went later in the draft or whatever. But Jonathan Isaac was probably the secondary biggest reason why that FSU team had the success that they had in college basketball last season. Jonathan Isaac is the future of basketball, basically. The future of positionless basketball. He can kind of do it all. He can defend. He can protect your rim because he's 6'11" and he's really long. He has the super long arms that are all the rage now. He can shoot outside a little bit. He has a pretty good mid-range game. He can put the ball on the floor. He's one of those like utility knives or whatever who can do basically everything you ask him to do on the court. Now, because he was the secondary star to Dwayne Bacon in college last year, we didn't even get to see the full range of his skills. I think this year with Orlando, he will be able to kind of spread his wings even more and display his full array of talent, because I honestly think he can do a little bit more ball handling and things of that nature than he showed in college basketball last year. I think he's really one of those guys who could probably put the ball on the floor, who could get a rebound, put the ball on the floor, and finish at the other end consistently. I honestly think he's that type of player. So if that is the case, I'm just very excited to see what he's going to bring to the table next year. Once again, another factor is with these guys who are like 19 years old coming into the NBA, we've seen it with Ben Simmons. We've seen it with Giannis Antetokounmpo. This guy might not even be finished growing. Before it's all said and done, he might be like 7'1", being as versatile as he can be. So we never know. Another thing is he's a very good athlete as well. He's very agile and things of that nature. He doesn't look clumsy when he runs or anything like that. I think the injury factor with him might also be pretty low. I think it's going to be less likely that he'll get injured and things of that nature. Now, you can't ever really predict an injury, but sometimes you can kind of tell, how some of these the tall athletes run and move and things of that nature, if they'll be very agile and if they'll run a higher injury risk. He is very agile. He runs, fast and, balanced and things of that nature. He doesn't look clumsy at any point. He's very fluid with his motions. So that's another factor why I think Jonathan Isaac is going to be very, very good in the NBA. Shelvin Mack. Now, this was a signee that went under the radar. Shelvin Mack was somebody who played with the Utah Jazz last year next to Gordon Hayward, his college buddy. And I thought he had some good moments. He did fall out of the lineup, fall out of the rotation at one point, which is never a good sign for a free agent player or whatever if they fell out of the rotation as a backup with their previous team. That did happen, but he did work his way back into the lineup, and then he did play some valuable minutes in the playoffs and things of that nature. They do already have a backup point guard, so I kind of wonder what is he going to be. Well, he's not going to be the starter because they have Alfred Payton. I don't know why they really picked him up because they already had his position filled, but we'll see. I do like Shelvin Mack as a player. I've liked him since he's been in Atlanta. I do think he can bring something to the table. I do think he can be a pretty good defender. He can shoot somewhat consistently, and he can play make. So I don't understand why the stock on Shelvin Mack is so low, but we'll see. We'll see what he can bring to Orlando. Adrian Payne, another Michigan State guy, who I was wrong about. I really thought he would, especially with Minnesota. I thought Minnesota was a good spot for him to go. I thought he'd be able to have a pretty good career in the NBA up to this point, especially as a stretch four or whatever. Up to this point, he has not had the kind of impact in the NBA up to this point. He just has not. He has not been a factor. He has had trouble getting consistent minutes on an NBA team with Minnesota, a team that wasn't even good, even though last year, even though, you know, they're improving, but a team where minutes should have been available, there were absolutely none for Adrian Payton. And I thought he could be a good player next to Karl Anthony Towns, and it just didn't work out. Well, at this point, he is with the Orlando Magic. And with the Orlando Magic, he brings more opportunities to try to turn your career arc around. So we'll see what Adrian Payton can do with that situation. You also have Alfred Payton. Now, this is where it gets hairy. Alfred Payton is a very good playmaking guard, right? He's a very good distributing type point guard. He's pass first, everything that you really want in a point guard. The problem with Alfred Payton is that he kind of has that Rondo syndrome at this point. Like, he can't shoot consistently from outside, and that is a killer for an NBA point guard in today's NBA. Years ago, you may have been able to get away with that a little bit better, but these days, it just is not happening. If you're not somebody who can shoot the three at a consistent rate and hit and things of that nature, it's just not going to work out for you ultimately as far as being an elite guard in the NBA. Alfred Payton's challenge really this upcoming year and going forward in his career, first, if he wants to staying power in the NBA, is you have to get that three-point shot going. You have to be able to hit the three at somewhere like 40% for a point guard. Then you need to stretch the floor. If you can't stretch the floor for bigs or elite wings, elite slashing wings or whatever, then, I mean, you're going to have problems getting the job after your rookie contract is over. I mean, that's just what it is. I do like Alfred Payton's game, though. I just wish he could shoot, because if he can shoot, he'd be amongst the top point guards in the NBA. Let's talk about Terrence Ross. You know what you got when you got Terrence Ross. You know, he doesn't lie to you. His game is what it is. He's a tremendous athlete who can shoot threes, who can defend as well. So you kind of knew what you were getting with Terrence Ross, and there are no surprises there. Jonathan Simmons, one of their big free agent acquisitions. I think he's going to be very big for them. They didn't sign him for a lot of money by any stretch of the imagination. They did not sign him for a lot. He signed a pretty low contract for somebody of his talent level. But I really do believe that he is going to be very good. He was good with San Antonio last year. I noticed Greg Popovich trusted him enough to try him in different positions. Like, I noticed when Tony Parker went down, Jonathan Simmons became that ball handler. He was trying to push Jonathan Simmons to become more of a ball handler and become more of a facilitator on offense. Jonathan Simmons, after Kawhi Leonard went down in the playoffs, was like kind of the go-to guy for the Spurs, which is ridiculous because he's a pickup from the D-League, and Kawhi Leonard goes down and he's the next best option, basically. So with all that in mind, I do think he has what it takes to be a very good wing, especially in the Eastern Conference now that the wings mostly have all gone to the West. So he does have a chance to take his game. I think of everybody on this team, he has the biggest jump to take as far as possibly, moving to that next level, moving to possibly pre-stardom or something like that. Jonathan Simmons, he has the athleticism, he has the skills, he had a year or two under Greg Popovich, which will help him basketball IQ-wise. He's just somebody, and honestly, he really should have been an NBA player anyway from the beginning. He had situations that kind of prevented that from happening when it should have. But it ended up happening anyway because he had that talent. He was an elite type talent for somebody just walking around life, right? And not being a professional athlete. So he is somebody who I really think Orlando will benefit from having. He's somebody who could do a lot on the floor. He can also defend at a very high level. Playing off somebody like a Jonathan Isaac and a Aaron Gordon, I do think he can have a whole lot of success. You also have Vucevic. who is somebody who can be an inside presence and also somebody who can stretch the floor. And then you have Maurice Spates, the guy who came from Golden State and went to the Clippers and things of that nature. He's a stretch five, basically, who can play a little bit of defense and who can get you some buckets inside at times, who can get you some rebounds. Basically, Orlando's a team full of players, some of them with potential and others not so much. Like I said, I like the Jonathan Simmons acquisition. I like the draft pick, Jonathan Isaac. I do like Aaron Gordon. And Alfred Payton has potential if he can get a better three-point shot. Ultimately, this team is not going to be good enough to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. But for them, I think a good goal for the Orlando Magic is just to be better than they were last year. If they do, they will get another draft pick next year. They're going to have to figure out the point guard position, too. They're going to need to add more shooting, but they're going to need to figure out the point guard position. Is Alfred your guy, or isn't he? If he's your guy, you need to get him shooting 40% from the three-point line some way, somehow. If he's not your guy, then you need to find out who your guy is. But ultimately, Orlando is a team that could be on the rise soon. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like this upcoming year is going to be that year that they make that step. All right. If you disagree, that's fine. Leave the comments below. Give me your opinions. And, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like. And if you're new, go ahead and subscribe. All right. See you next time.